In 2015, the Nikka Yoichi 10-year-old and all the other age statement releases from the Nikka Yoichi line were discontinued. Flash forward 7 years to 2022, and the Nikka Yoichi 10-year-old Japanese single malt whiskey has made a return. I'm very glad today to have a sample of the Nikka Yoichi 10-year-old Japanese single malt on my table in my glass. I'm here to review it for you today. My name is Matt. This is Whiskey on the West Coast. If you've been watching the channel for a long time, you'll probably remember how much I love the Nikka Yoichi Single Malt Japanese whiskey. It is my favorite Japanese single malt out there, and I've always wanted to try an age-stated release of the Nikka Yoichi, and that's obviously a really hard thing to do because they discontinued all their age statement releases, as I mentioned in the opener here, back in 2015. And we said goodbye to the 10-year-old, the 12-year-old, the 15-year-old, and the 20-year-old. And really any age-stated Japanese whiskeys became very, very expensive and very hard to acquire. And this was because Japanese whiskey had been receiving a lot of accolades, had become very popular abroad outside of Japan, but also had kind of a resurgence in the Japanese market itself, mainly with highballs. However, in 2022, as I mentioned, the Nikka Yoichi 10-year-old started a gradual return to the shelves. I believe it's 9,000 bottles were released in the first iteration in 2022. I stood in line for many hours outside in very cold temperatures at the BC Spirits release in the winter, the fall Spirits release, to get a bottle of the Nikka Yoichi 10-year-old. You might notice that I don't actually have a bottle of the 10-year-old beside me here. And that's because we're in the middle of moving. We've bought a townhouse, our first home, and we're going to be packing up the studio and the office here, and we're going to be moving. So I don't have the bottle to show you here, but I have this sample of Nikka Yoichi 10-year-old. I've been just itching to try it, and so that's why I've gone ahead and I poured that in my glass here today. So Nikka Yoichi, the 10-year-old, it's 45% ABV, just like the NAS version here. Both are 45%, both are chill filtered and colored. Japanese single malt made on the island of Hokaido in the north. If you're familiar with the story of Masataka Takasuru, and really just the whole story of the Nikka Yoichi distillery. If not, actually Google it, and there's a lot of resources out there. Really fascinating story about how he learned to make whiskey in Scotland and brought that back to Japan. The cask makeup of the new 10-year-old, and I don't know if this is a 2023 release or the 2022, I guess, return release. That was 9,000 bottles. What I do know is the cask makeup is virgin American oak, ex-bourbon casks, ex-sherry casks, and shaved toast recharred like STR casks. So quite a smorgasbord of cask types in this release. It's not just simply ex-bourbon and ex-sherry. There's a bit more to it. Some of the things I really love about the Nikka Yoichi distillery in particular are the fact that I believe it's the only coal-fired, direct-fired still distillery. So they have direct fire stills, but they're not just that, but they're coal-fired. To my knowledge, the last Scottish distilleries that dismantled their coal-fired stills were Glendronach in 2005 and Ardmore in 2001. So it's really a style that doesn't really exist anywhere else other than Nikka Yoichi to my knowledge. So I really love that about this distillery. It's something that makes it very unique. They also use worm tubs at this distillery. They have wooden washbacks, which I'm a big fan of because you get all that like really good bacteria growth that can help bring certain esters and flavor profiles to the whiskey. And they also, at least partially, use their own proprietary yeast strains. So there's a lot of things that make Yoichi unique in and of itself. And really that's part of what makes them my favorite Japanese distillery. But what really makes them my favorite Japanese distillery is how good it tastes and smells. So let's turn to the glass here. The Nikka Yoichi 10-year-old that I stood in line to purchase was $200 for the bottle. If you compare that to the non-age statement, I got my bottle for $60 Canadian on sale. It can commonly be found in Canada for $80 to $100. But yeah, let's get to the review. Nikka Yoichi 10-year-old Japanese single malt, 45% ABV, as I mentioned. It is colored. It is chill filtered. On the nose, bloody beautiful nose. So there's some deep toffee notes, but what's getting me in this, again, just pretty nose, is the peat smoke along with like really well expressed like orange oils, orange marmalade, banana flavored runts. If you know what those taste like, imagine like the retronasal smell of that as you're eating them, the smell, the aroma you get with it. Yeah, banana flavored runts candies. It's salty, but it is so pretty and refined, but with an edge. Vanilla, lemon, and then something kind of jammy in there too. Jammy yet like twiggy. So maybe like a passion fruit tea. Have you ever had like a fruity tea? It's really stereotypical to say something like lapsang souchang, but like the smoky tea. It's not that strong, and the peat doesn't profile that way. But since I was thinking about tea, that came to mind too. But no, it's not that. That's more something I get out of like Lagavulin. This is nowhere's in that range. I think the phenols on this are like more like 10 to 12, and residual phenols in the actual distillate are going to be much lower. So it's peated whiskey for sure, but it's subtle, which is why it's just coming off so absurdly pretty. More on those candy notes, the Rockets candy. And if you grew up like in Canada, like I did, you'd be familiar with like perhaps like at least Canada in the 90s Fun Dip candies, where you use that like candy chalk stick and you dip it into the awful kind of sugary powder, and then you stick that in your mouth and you eat it. Yeah, we ate terrible things in the 90s, didn't we? I suppose every generation has their version of that. All right, this nose is gorgeous. Let's turn to the palate. Earthy, medicinal peat smoke, and the smoke is more subdued, and the earthy tones are coming through a lot more. Yeah, less smoke, but more like sweet earthiness. That's really nice, almost a touch leathery, to be honest. Orange citrus again, kind of more like orange oils, maybe even a touch of grapefruit, because there is a slight bitterness here from the oak tannins on the finish right now. That banana note was really prominent again too. Yeah, banana runts candies is my go-to for that flavor note, tasty note. Apples, actually fairly salty, fairly coastal. I'd say saltier than the nose let on. Those tea notes carry on again. At the end, you can kind of tell that there's a bit more age to this than the NAS version, because of that oak backbone that's helping to kind of make the finish not just kind of sweet and petering off, but it starts off sweet and then it goes into that kind of oak bite, that oak tannin grip. Medium long finish right now, honestly. It's punching above its weight for 45% ABV and chill filtered. I can't help but dream of what this would be like, how potentially viscous, just like what texture we would get and how that would translate to the finish, what flavors we'd get if this was non-chill filtered. But really very nice. One more sip. Medicinal yet sweet. Sweetness, fades out. You're left with that sort of almost medicinal, earthy peat note, and you're being brought right in to that oak tannin grip. Almost, again, kind of tea notes, which I usually get tea notes more on a 20-year-old whiskey, not on a 10-year-old whiskey, depending on how the oak treatment has been, but very, very nice. Really, it's just such a pretty whiskey. It's a very pretty peated Japanese single malt. For comparison, I have this poured out for a comparison. The NAS, very quickly on the nose, very much into those banana notes and citrus. None of those deeper tones to it. The peat's there, but it's subtle on the nose. Less coastal than the 10 as well. Banana notes again, some citrus. The peat is more on smoke as opposed to those earthier, deeper tones. There is a certain coastal element to the finish, but it is a brighter whiskey. It feels less complete, and it just feels younger. It feels younger. I would guess probably 6 or 7 years old, but that's just a guess. Very clearly, these two whiskeys are of the same DNA, though. You can see the distillate character there with these peaty tones, coastal notes, banana, citrus. Yeah, I really am. I do enjoy both of these whiskeys, but this 10-year-old is something else. And for the price, it had to be something very good to make it worthwhile. Yeah, I do love both of these. Yoichi, again, my favorite Japanese distillery, so I'm already convinced by them. But if I had to place a score on the Yoichi 10 at the price I had to pay, again, in and around $200 after tax, it's a high cost, but age-stated Japanese whiskeys are, one, hard to find, and number two, are always expensive these days. I'm going to give this a score of about 88 out of 100, and when I actually crack into my own bottle, and when I get to kind of explore it and drink the bottle down, see how it develops, I could easily see that score going higher to an 89 or even a 90. 88 plus as a score. This is just a first impression of this whiskey. It's a sample. You can only get to know a whiskey so much through a sample, but color me impressed. I'm very happy that I stood in line in the cold and picked up a bottle of the Nikka Yoichi 10-year-old. Thank you for joining me here, guys. I want to know, what is your favorite Japanese whiskey? Do you have a lot of experience with Japanese whiskeys? Are you on the Japanese whiskey train? I have heard a lot of buzz, and I've tried a little bit of whiskey from the Keshi distillery on the island of Hokaido as well. Japanese whiskey, there seems to be a lot of new distilleries upcoming here, so we might see an explosion in the availability of Japanese whiskeys. I'm really excited for, but let me know what your favorites are. Thank you to my Patreon subscribers. Thank you to all my subscribers of the channel. You guys are amazing. You guys are the reason why I do this. I just love sharing whiskey with you. Leave some comments down below on what you think about this review or about this whiskey. If you haven't already, subscribe and like and comment on the videos. We're always looking for new members of Whiskey on the West Coast. And come back and join me again for more videos in the future from the West Coast. Slange.